The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched higher than any cathedral on Earth. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the central podium, her uniform pressed sharp, her hands steady despite the weight of humanity's survival resting on her shoulders. Above her, floating on anti-gravity platforms, sat representatives of 43 alien species. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few existed as pure energy contained in crystalline shells. All of them looked down at her with eyes that held no warmth. Honored council members. Sarah began, her voice amplified across the vast space. Earth formally requests military assistance under Article 7 of the Mutual Defense Treaty. The Devourers have entered our space. They have already consumed the colonies on Proxima Station and New Hope. 17 million humans are dead. We need help. The holographic displays showed the horror. Organic ships, twisted and wrong, moving through space like sharks through water. They didn't just destroy worlds. They consumed them. Every bit of metal, every drop of water, every living thing was absorbed into their mass. The survivors' screams still echoed in Sarah's nightmares. High Chancellor Vorn of the Valorians shifted on his platform. His species had ruled the Council for 3,000 years. They looked almost human, except for the silver skin and eyes without pupils. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice smooth as silk and twice as cold. "The Council sympathizes with your situation. However, we must consider all factors before committing forces." Sarah's jaw tightened. Sympathizes, as if humanity was asking for charity instead of invoking a treaty they had signed in good faith just 5 years ago. "With respect, Chancellor, the treaty is clear. When a member species faces existential threat, the Council must respond within 48 hours. The treaty also requires proof of existential threat," said Councillor Zethra of the Zenthi. Her species looked like mantises carved from blue crystal. "We have reviewed your data. The Devourers are concerning, yes, but your military projections may be exaggerated." Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Exaggerated? We sent you the footage. We sent you the biological analysis. These things adapt to every weapon we use. They learn. They grow stronger. If we fall, they won't stop. They'll come for you next." "That," said Chancellor Vorn, "remains to be seen. The Council will deliberate. You will have our answer within the standard period." "The standard period is 10 days, Sarah protested. "We don't have 10 days. They'll reach our inner colonies in 72 hours. "Then you must hold them for 72 hours, Vorn replied. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "The Council is dismissed." The platforms began to rise, floating toward the exits. Sarah stood alone at the podium, her hands gripping the edges so hard her knuckles turned white. Around her, the other human delegates looked as shocked as she felt. Ambassador Rodriguez, who had spent 3 years building relationships with Council members, simply shook his head. "They're going to let us die," he whispered. Sarah didn't respond. She couldn't. The truth was too horrible to speak aloud. The human delegation was given quarters in the station's diplomatic wing. Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat at the window staring at the stars, wondering which one was Sewell, wondering if her family on Earth would live to see another sunrise. A soft chime at her door broke the silence. Sarah's hand went to her sidearm before she remembered where she was. "Come in." It was Lieutenant Marcus Webb from the Intelligence Division. He looked young, barely 30, but his eyes were older. "Captain, you need to see this." He handed her a datapad. Sarah's blood ran cold as she read. The Council's private channels weren't as secure as they thought. Marcus had been monitoring them, looking for any hint of support, any species that might help humanity. Instead, he found something else. The intercepted message was from Chancellor Vorn to the Zenthi High Command. "The human situation presents an opportunity. Let the Devourers weaken them. When both are exhausted, we move in. Earth's system contains 17 resource-rich worlds. The Valorian Empire claims the inner 4. The Zenthi Collective may have the outer rings. We split the remaining territory among the other members who support this plan." Sarah read it 3 times. Each time the words stayed the same. The Council hadn't just denied their request. They had planned humanity's destruction. They were going to let Earth burn, then pick over the ashes. "How many species are in on this?" she asked, her voice flat. 27, Marcus replied. "More than half the Council. The others either don't know or don't care enough to object." Sarah stood and walked to the window. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were getting closer to Earth. And here, in this gleaming station that supposedly represented galactic civilization, Politicians were dividing up humanity's corpse before it was even cold. "We need to get this information home," she said. "Earth needs to know what's coming. Not just the Devourers. The Council, too." "Already done," Marcus said. "I sent it through the emergency channel an hour ago. Admiral Johnson should have it by now." Sarah nodded. At least Earth would know the truth. They stood alone. Every species in the galaxy had either betrayed them or turned a blind eye. Humanity had trusted the Council, believed in galactic unity, in the fellowship of sentient beings. That trust had been a lie. The next morning, the Council reconvened. Chancellor Vorn delivered the official decision with all the ceremony of a funeral rite. The Council, in its wisdom, had determined that the Devourer threat did not yet meet the threshold for mutual defense. However, they would consider sending observers to monitor the situation. If humanity could demonstrate the threat was indeed existential, the Council would reconsider in 30 days. 30 days. Earth would be dead in a week. Sarah didn't bother arguing. She simply bowed and led the delegation out. As they walked through the corridors of Arcturus Station toward their ship, she could feel eyes on them. Some pitying. Some hungry, all of them seeing humans as already dead. Captain Chen, Ambassador Rodriguez said as they reached the docking bay. "What do we do now?" Sarah looked at the faces of her fellow humans. They were scared. They had every right to be. Humanity was about to face extinction alone, betrayed by the very civilization they had hoped to join. "We go home," she said. "We tell them the truth. And we fight. That's what humans do. We fight." The ship undocked from Arcturus Station 12 hours later. As they jumped to faster than light speed, Sarah took one last look at the massive structure. It gleamed in the darkness, a monument to a galactic order that had just revealed itself to be built on lies and opportunism. She didn't know it then, but the Council had made a terrible mistake. They thought humanity was weak. They thought humans would die quietly. They thought betrayal would go unanswered. They were wrong. Somewhere in the dark between stars, as the human ship raced toward Earth, Sarah Chen made a promise to herself. If humanity survived this, if they found a way through the darkness ahead, there would be a reckoning. The Council would learn that betrayal had consequences. They would learn that humanity remembered, and they would pay. Admiral Marcus Johnson stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the tactical display with tired eyes. Another red dot had appeared. Another colony gone. New Beijing had held for 3 days before the Devourers overwhelmed their defenses. 2 million people had lived there. Now it was just another feeding ground for the swarm. "Admiral, we're receiving distress calls from the Titan mining station," his communications officer reported. "They have maybe 6 hours. 6 hours. Marcus checked the fleet positions. His ships were scattered across 12 star systems, trying to defend everywhere and succeeding nowhere. The Devourers were unlike any enemy humanity had ever faced. They adapted. Every weapon humans used became less effective the second time. Energy weapons were absorbed. Kinetic rounds were deflected. Nuclear warheads seemed to just make them angry. "Send the 7th Fleet," Marcus ordered. "Tell them to buy as much time as they can, then retreat to the Mars defensive line." The officer hesitated. "Sir, the 7th is already down to 40% strength." "I know." Marcus knew the cost of every order he gave. He knew the names of the captains. Some he had served with. Some were friends. All of them were going to die. The only question was how much time they could buy. Earth itself was preparing for siege. Every ship that could fly, every weapon that could fire, every person who could fight was being mobilized. The orbital defense platforms were working at full capacity, but Marcus had seen the projections. Even with everything humanity could throw at them, the Devourers would reach Earth in 2 weeks, and then it would be over. "Sir, Captain Chen is here to see you," his aide announced. Marcus turned to see Sarah Chen walking onto the bridge. She had made it back from Arcturus Station just in time to watch the war begin. The information she brought about the Council's betrayal had sparked rage across Earth. But rage didn't stop the Devourers. Nothing seemed to stop them. "Captain," Marcus greeted her. "I'm assigning you to the Endeavor." "We need experienced commanders." Sarah shook her head. "With respect, Admiral, I'm not here for a ship assignment. I need to show you something." She pulled out a data pad and brought up a series of scans. "We've been analyzing the Devourers' attack patterns. There's something strange. They're coordinated but not in any way we recognize. No radio signals, no quantum entanglement communications, nothing on any spectrum we can detect. Marcus frowned. So how are they coordinating? That's what Dr. Yuki Chen figured out. Sarah pulled up another display. She's been studying the few intact devourer corpses we've recovered. She found specialized organs in their brain structures. She thinks they're psionic. Psionic. Marcus almost laughed. You mean telepathy? Mind reading? Not reading, broadcasting. The devourers have a hive mind, Admiral. They're all connected through some kind of psionic network. That's how they adapt so fast. When one learns, they all learn. When one evolves a defense, they all get it. Marcus stared at the data. If this was true, it changed everything. And nothing. So they're connected. How does that help us? We don't have psionic weapons. We barely understand what psionics are. We do now. Sarah's eyes gleamed with something that might have been hope. Dr. Chen and her team have been working in the Cheyenne Mountain facility. They've developed something called a resonance disruptor. It generates a psionic interference field. In theory, it could sever the devourers' connection to each other. In theory. The simulations look good, Admiral. Really good. Without their hive mind, the devourers become just animals. Dangerous animals, but ones we can fight. Ones we can kill. Marcus felt something stir in his chest. Something he thought had died watching colony after colony burn. What do you need? Time, Sarah said. The device works, but it's massive. It needs to be deployed at multiple points across the battlefield to cover enough space. We need to place them at strategic locations around Earth. But they take 12 hours to power up and calibrate. 12 hours. Marcus looked at the tactical display. The devourers would reach Earth's outer defense perimeter in 8 days. We can give you 12 hours. What else? Sarah's expression darkened. There's a problem, Admiral. The resonance disruptor uses massive amounts of energy. When we activate it, the power signature will be visible across half the galaxy. Every species with sensors will know exactly where Earth is and what we have. Marcus understood immediately. Earth's location was one of humanity's few remaining secrets. The Council knew the general region of human space, but not exact coordinates. They had been watching, waiting for humanity to die. When the disruptor activated, they would know exactly where to send their invasion fleets. So we trade one enemy for another, Marcus said quietly. Maybe, Sarah replied, but the devourers will kill us in days. The Council will take months to mobilize and reach us. That's time we can use. To do what? We barely survived the devourers. How do we fight the entire Galactic Council? Sarah smiled, and there was something fierce in it. We don't just survive, Admiral. We win. Dr. Chen's team has found something else. The devourer biotechnology, the way they adapt and evolve, we can use it. We can integrate it into our ships, our weapons. Everything we've learned fighting them, we can turn against the Council. Marcus looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. This wasn't the diplomat who had gone to Arcturus Station begging for help. This was someone harder, someone the war had forged. You're talking about building a fleet powerful enough to take on the Council. I'm talking about survival, Admiral, and when we survive, I'm talking about making them pay. The plan was insane. It was desperate. It was dangerous in ways Marcus couldn't even fully calculate. But as he looked at the display showing humanity's shrinking territory, he realized they had no choice. The Council had betrayed them. The devourers were killing them. Humanity's back was against the wall. Sometimes when there was no good choice, you had to make the least bad one. Do it, Marcus ordered. Get your resonance disruptors in place. I'll buy you the time you need. Over the next 8 days, humanity fought like never before. Every ship, every weapon, every person who could stand fought the devourers at the outer edge of the solar system. The Battle of Neptune lasted 4 days. The ice giant's atmosphere burned with weapons fire. Thousands of ships, human and devourer, died in the frozen dark. Captain Sarah Chen commanded a squadron of destroyers, using hit-and-run tactics to slow the enemy advance. She watched friends die. She gave orders that sent people to their deaths. And she kept fighting. Admiral Marcus Johnson coordinated from Earth orbit, moving pieces on a chessboard where every piece was a life. The devourers were relentless. For every one humanity killed, 3 more appeared. But they held. Barely. Desperately. They held. In Cheyenne Mountain, Dr. Yuki Chen and her team worked without sleep, calibrating the resonance disruptors. The devices were ready. They just needed the Devourers to be in range. On the 8th day, the Devourer main fleet reached Earth's inner defense perimeter. They came like a wave of darkness, thousands of organic ships blotting out the stars. The human fleet, battered and reduced to a fraction of its strength, formed a final line between the enemy and Earth. Marcus watched them come. This was it. Humanity's last stand. Either the disruptors worked or everyone died. Dr. Chen, he said into the comm. Do it now. Across Earth's orbital space, 20 resonance disruptors activated simultaneously. The energy surge was massive, visible, screaming humanity's location to the entire galaxy. But Marcus didn't care about that now. He watched the Devourers. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the enemy fleet began to falter. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination suddenly drifted. Some collided with each other. Others simply stopped. It's working. Sarah's voice came over the comm, filled with wonder. Admiral, it's actually working. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. All ships attack. Kill them all. The battle lasted another 6 hours, but without their hive mind, the Devourers were just animals. Dangerous but killable. Humanity's remaining ships tore through them with systematic efficiency. When it was over, the space around Earth was filled with Devourer corpses. Humanity had survived. But as Marcus watched recovery teams collect both human and Devourer bodies, he knew the war wasn't over. Somewhere out there, the Council had detected their signal. They would come expecting to find humanity's corpse. Instead, they would find something else, something that had been forged in fire and betrayal, something that would show them the cost of leaving humanity to die. The silence after victory was worse than the battle. Admiral Marcus Johnson walked through the corridors of the orbital hospital, past beds filled with wounded soldiers. The smell of disinfectant couldn't quite cover the smell of burned flesh. Earth had survived, but the cost had been terrible. 5 billion dead. A quarter of humanity gone in 2 weeks of hell. Every major city had damage from falling debris. The orbital elevators were destroyed. The moon colonies were ruins. Earth itself was scarred with impact craters where Devourer bioships had crashed through the defenses, but they had survived. That was more than the Galactic Council had expected. Marcus found Sarah Chen in one of the observation rooms, staring at Earth below. Her left arm was in a sling. Her face had burns that the doctors said would scar. She had been on the Endeavor when it rammed a Devourer command ship. The ship had been destroyed. Sarah had lived. They're coming, Sarah said without turning around. I've been monitoring the Council channels. They detected our resonance disruptor activation. Chancellor Vorn has called an emergency session. Let me guess, Marcus said, sitting down heavily. They're very concerned about the Devourer threat now. Worse, they're calling it a humanitarian mission. They want to send peacekeeping forces to help stabilize human space. They're even talking about relocating survivors to Council worlds for their own safety. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Relocating? You mean enslaving? Dividing us up like the spoils they planned all along? That's exactly what I mean. Sarah finally turned to look at him. Marcus, we can't let them do this. We didn't survive the Devourers just to become the Council's property. What choice do we have? Marcus gestured at Earth below. Look at us. We're broken. Half our fleet is destroyed. Our industries are damaged. We barely have enough ships to defend one planet, let alone fight the entire Council. Sarah's eyes gleamed with that fierce light he had seen before. What if we don't wait for them to come to us? What if we go to them? Marcus stared at her. You want to attack the Council? With what? They have thousands of ships, hundreds of worlds. We have one planet and whatever ships we manage to keep flying. We have something else, Sarah said. She pulled out a data pad and showed him a video. It was from one of the secret facilities built during the war. What Marcus saw made his breath catch. Ships, but not like any human ships he had ever seen. They were sleek, organic-looking, with lines that reminded him uncomfortably of the Devourers. But there was something else. Human design. Human weapons. A fusion of two technologies that should never have worked together. What am I looking at? Marcus whispered. The future, Sarah replied. During the war, Dr. Chen's team didn't just study the Devourers. They harvested them, took their biotechnology, their adaptive capabilities, their regenerative systems, and they integrated it with our ships. These vessels can heal themselves. They can adapt to enemy weapons in real time. And they're fast, Marcus. Faster than anything the Council has. Marcus couldn't look away from the screen. The ships were beautiful and terrible. How many? 30 completed. Another 50 under construction. We've been building them in secret facilities across the asteroid belt. Places the Council doesn't know about. Places even most of Earth's government doesn't know about. 80 ships against the entire Council, Marcus said. That's still suicide. It would be if we fought fair, Sarah agreed. But we're not going to fight fair. We're going to hit them where they're weak. The Council isn't united, Marcus. They're a collection of species held together by convenience and Chancellor Vorn's manipulation. Half of them don't trust each other. If we strike at the head, if we show the galaxy what the Council really is, the whole thing will collapse. Marcus stood and walked to the window. Below, Earth was scarred but alive. People were rebuilding. Children were being born. Humanity was continuing despite everything. The Council wanted to take that away. They wanted to finish what the Devourers started. You're talking about war, he said. Real war. Not defense, attack. I'm talking about survival, Sarah corrected. The Council tried to kill us once. They'll try again. Every species that knows we exist will see us as prey or as a threat. We need to show them we're neither. We need to show them we're the ones they should fear. Marcus turned back to her. This could go wrong in 1,000 ways. We could lose. Humanity could be completely wiped out. We could, Sarah agreed. Or we could win. We could break the Council's power. We could create something new. Something better. An alliance based on equals, not masters and slaves. Marcus was quiet for a long time. He thought about all the people who had died. The colonies that had burned. The families destroyed. All because the Council had decided humanity was expendable. All because they had been betrayed by those who promised protection. If we do this, he said slowly, there's no going back. We become something different. Not the species begging for acceptance. Not the victims. We become the threat. Good, Sarah said simply. Let them fear us. Fear keeps you alive. Over the next 3 months, humanity prepared for war. It was kept secret from the Council. To outside observers, Earth looked broken, defeated, barely holding on. Ships made regular trips to the asteroid belt for supplies, but those same ships returned carrying something else. Weapons, technology, the seeds of revolution. Dr. Yuki Chen led the integration efforts. Taking Devourer biotechnology and making it serve human purposes was dangerous work. Several researchers died when experimental systems rejected their human hosts, but slowly, carefully they learned. They adapted. Just like humanity always had, the new ships were called Wraiths. They could move through space faster than anything the Council possessed. Their hulls could absorb and redirect energy weapons. Their biomechanical systems could repair damage in hours instead of days. And their weapons that combined human innovation with devourer lethality, could tear through any shield in the galaxy. Marcus took personal command of the fleet, 80 ships against an empire that spanned hundreds of worlds. The odds were impossible. That had never stopped humans before. Sarah was promoted to captain of the lead Wraith, the Retribution. The name was chosen carefully. This wasn't about defense anymore. This was about payback. This was about showing the Council that betrayal had consequences. The intelligence from Council space showed they were mobilizing. 3 massive fleets were being assembled. 1 to occupy Earth, 1 to claim the resource-rich outer colonies, 1 to hunt down any human survivors who tried to run. Chancellor Vorn was on the flagship of the Earth invasion force. He wanted to personally oversee humanity's final chapter. He was going to get a different ending than he expected. The Fleet of Reckoning, as it came to be called, departed from Earth in secret. Most of humanity didn't even know they existed. To the public, these were defensive patrols, nothing more. Only a few people knew the truth. They were humanity's sword, aimed at the heart of the Council. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Retribution as they made the final jump. Around him, 80 ships prepared for battle. Behind them, Earth waited, holding its breath. Ahead, the Galactic Council continued their preparations, thinking they were about to claim an easy victory. All ships report ready, Sarah said from the tactical station. Jump coordinates locked. We'll emerge directly over Valoria Prime, the Valorian homeworld. Not at the borders? Marcus asked. Not at their military stations? No, Sarah said, and her smile was cold. We're going straight for their capital. We're going to show them what it feels like to have death arrive at your doorstep without warning. Just like they did to us, Marcus nodded. It was a bold move. Reckless even. But that was the point. The Council thought humans were weak, were beaten, were ready to surrender. They were about to learn how wrong they were. All ships, Marcus announced. This is Admiral Johnson. We didn't ask for this war. We didn't want this fight. But the Council chose to betray us. They chose to leave us to die. They chose to think we were weak. Today we show them the cost of that choice. Today we show them what humanity becomes when pushed to the edge. Today we take the fight to them. He paused, looking at the faces of his crew, young and old, veteran and rookie, all of them ready, all of them angry, all of them ready to make the Council pay. Engage jump drives, he ordered. Let's go teach them a lesson about betrayal. The Wraith fleet vanished from Earth space in a pulse of light. When they reappeared, it would be over the Council's most powerful world. The predators had become the prey. The betrayed had become the reckoning, and the galaxy would never be the same. Chancellor Vorn stood in his private chambers overlooking the city of eternal light. Below him, the capital of Valoria Prime stretched for hundreds of miles, a monument to 3,000 years of civilization. His people had ruled the Galactic Council since its founding. They had brought order to chaos, structure to the wild galaxy, and now they were about to add humanity's territory to their empire. The reports from the forward fleets were encouraging. The humans were still recovering from the Devourer War. Their defenses were minimal. In 2 days, his armada would reach Earth. In 3, humanity would be divided among the Council members. The Valorians would take the choicest worlds. It was only fitting. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called. His military advisor, General Thask, rushed in with unusual urgency. "Chancellor, we have a situation." "Can it wait?" "I'm reviewing the occupation protocols." "No, sir." "There's been an emergence. Multiple ships. Unknown configuration. They appeared directly in orbit." Vorn frowned. "Pirates?" "Deal with them." "Sir, it's not pirates. The energy signatures are strange. Biomechanical. And Chancellor, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. You need to see this." Thask activated a holoprojector. An image appeared showing a human woman in a military uniform. She stood on the bridge of a ship that looked wrong, organic and metallic at once. The human had burns on her face. Her eyes were cold. "People of the galaxy," she said. "My name is Captain Sarah Chen of Earth. I speak for humanity. The Galactic Council told you we were dead. They told you the Devourers destroyed us. They lied. We survived. And now we're here to show you the truth about your leaders." The image changed, showing documents, recordings, intercepted communications. Vorn felt ice in his veins as he recognized them. These were the secret transmissions between Council members, the plan to let humanity die, the agreement to divide their territory, everything. "The Council didn't deny us aid because the threat was insufficient," Sarah continued. "They denied us aid so we would die. They wanted our worlds. They wanted our resources. They were willing to let billions die for profit. This is your Galactic Council. These are your leaders." The transmission cut to show ships emerging from hyperspace. Strange ships, unlike anything Vorn had seen. They moved like living things, their hulls rippling, their weapons charging with an eerie organic glow. "We came here for justice," Sarah said. "We came here for truth. And we came here for war. The Council chose to be our enemy. Now they'll learn what that means." The transmission ended. Vorn stood frozen. Humans. Here. At Valoria Prime. With ships that should not exist. "How many?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Sensors are having trouble getting accurate readings. The ships seem to be interfering with our scans. Best estimate is 80 vessels, 80 ships." Vorn almost laughed. The Valorian home fleet had over 1,000 ships in orbit. This was suicide. The humans were throwing away their last forces in a gesture of spite. "Activate all defense platforms," Vorn ordered. "Deploy the home fleet." "Destroy them!" General Thask saluted and left quickly. Vorn turned back to the window. This was an annoyance, nothing more. The humans would die here, and the occupation of Earth would proceed as planned, perhaps even more thoroughly, to ensure no other humans remained to cause trouble. The Battle of Valoria Prime began with the Valorian fleet moving to engage. Over 1,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of technology, advanced on the human force. The Valorians had fought wars across the galaxy. They had never lost a major engagement. They were confident. That confidence lasted approximately 7 minutes. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the Retribution as the Valorian fleet approached. They came in formation, disciplined by the book. They had no idea what they were facing. "All ships engage at will," Admiral Marcus Johnson ordered from his command ship. "Show them what we learned from the Devourers." The Wraith fleet split apart, each ship moving with impossible agility. The Valorians opened fire first. Energy beams and plasma bolts filled space. The human ships didn't try to dodge. They didn't need to. Their biomechanical hulls absorbed the energy, converting it to power for their own systems. Then the Wraiths returned fire. The weapons humanity had developed were like nothing the galaxy had seen. They combined energy projection with biological warfare. The bolts that struck Valorian ships didn't just damage them, they infected them. Biomechanical organisms spread across hulls, eating through shields, dissolving armor, creating weak points that subsequent shots exploited mercilessly. "Target their flagship," Sarah ordered, the one with Chancellor Vorn's signature. The Retribution dove through the Valorian formation, its weapons carving a path. Other Wraiths followed, and suddenly the disciplined Valorian fleet was in chaos. Ships that had fought together for decades found themselves unable to coordinate against an enemy that moved like water and struck like lightning. The flagship, the pride of Valoria, was the most heavily defended ship in the fleet. Its shields could withstand a supernova. Its weapons could crack a planet. None of it mattered. The Retribution's main cannon, powered by adapted Devourer biotechnology, punched through the shields like they weren't there. The biological payload spread across the flagship's hull. "Boarding teams, go," Sarah commanded. Pods launched from the Retribution, carrying human soldiers in powered armor. They landed on the Pride's hull and cut their way inside. The Valorians fought, but they were used to ship-to-ship combat, not boarding actions. Humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years. They knew close combat in ways the Valorians had forgotten. Sarah led the team that reached the bridge. Chancellor Vorn stood there, surrounded by his guards, looking at her with disbelief. "This is impossible," he said. "You should be dead." "You tried to kill us," Sarah replied, her weapon trained on him. "You failed. Now you're going to stand trial for what you did." "Trial?" Vorn laughed. "You think you can defeat the Council? We have hundreds of worlds, thousands of ships. You have 80 vessels. You've won a battle. You cannot win the war." "Watch us," Sarah said, and signaled her team to take him into custody. Around Valoria Prime, the battle continued. The human ships were outnumbered 12-1, but it didn't matter. The Valorians had grown soft, relying on superior numbers and technology. Humans had spent 2 weeks fighting the Devourers, adapting, learning, evolving. Every tactic the Valorians tried, the humans countered. Every formation they used, the humans broke. Admiral Marcus Johnson watched from his command ship as the Valorian fleet began to retreat. Not an organized withdrawal, but a rout. Ships were fleeing in every direction, desperate to escape. The mighty Valorian armada, pride of the Council, was being destroyed by a force a fraction of its size. "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy," his communications officer reported. "Other species are watching. The whole Council is seeing this." "Good," Marcus replied. "Let them see. Let them understand what happens when you betray humanity." But the battle at Valoria Prime was only the beginning. The fleet of Reckoning split into smaller groups. One force jumped to Zenthi space, appearing over their industrial worlds. Another went to the Corthian systems. A third materialized at the Council's military academy. The strategy was clear: hit everywhere at once. Don't give them time to organize. Don't let them concentrate their forces. Show them that nowhere was safe, that the humans they had tried to kill could reach any world in the galaxy. At Zenthi Prime, Commander David Park led the assault. The Zenthi were warriors, proud and fierce. They came out to fight, and they died. Their ships, designed for conventional warfare, couldn't adapt to human tactics. Their weapons, powerful but predictable, were countered before they could fire. At the Corthian mining colonies, Captain Liu Wei demonstrated a different approach. Instead of destroying the ships, her forces disabled them, broadcast the Council's betrayal to the workers, and offered them a choice. Join humanity's cause or be left adrift. Most chose to join. Across Council space, the pattern repeated. The military forces that had seemed so powerful were revealed to be paper tigers. They had grown complacent, unused to real opposition. The humans forged in the fire of the Devourer War were something else entirely. They were survivors. They were fighters. And they were angry. In the Council chambers on Arcturus Station, panic reigned. Species that had been allies for centuries turned on each other. The Valorians blamed the Zenthi for poor intelligence. The Zenthi blamed the Korthians for weak defenses. Everyone blamed everyone else. No one wanted to admit the truth. They had created this enemy. They had betrayed a species that only wanted to join them. They had thought humans were weak. And now humanity was demonstrating exactly how wrong they had been. Chancellor Vorn, imprisoned on a human ship, watched the reports with growing horror. The council was fracturing. Species were withdrawing their fleets, refusing to fight. Some were even reaching out to humanity, offering to switch sides. The great Galactic Council, which had stood for 3,000 years, was collapsing. All because they had underestimated one species. All because they had chosen greed over honor, and the humans weren't stopping. They were pressing their advantage, driving deeper into Council territory, liberating the species that had been oppressed, showing the galaxy a different way. The hunters had become the hunted. The victims had become the victors. And across the galaxy, the message was clear. Humanity had descended upon the Council like the wrath of an angry god. And they were not finished yet. The war lasted 3 weeks. Not the years that everyone expected. Not the grinding conflict that military strategists predicted. 3 weeks from the moment humanity's fleet descended on Valoria Prime until the Council's formal surrender. It wasn't that humanity destroyed every Council ship. It wasn't that they conquered every world. It was something simpler and more devastating. They broke the lie. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained power through a carefully crafted image. They were the protectors, the wise leaders, the guardians of galactic peace. When humanity broadcast the truth of their betrayal, when they showed the galaxy the secret communications and the planned genocide, that image shattered. And without the lie, the Council had nothing. Admiral Marcus Johnson stood in what had been the Council chambers on Arcturus Station. The great platforms where species had looked down on petitioners were empty now. Some Council members had fled. Others had surrendered. A few had tried to fight and had been defeated. The chamber was silent except for his footsteps echoing across the vast space. Strange, isn't it? Captain Sarah Chen said, walking up beside him. Her burns were healing, though the scars would remain. She wore them like badges of honor. We fought so hard to speak in this room. Now it's empty. Not for long, Marcus replied. He gestured to the human engineers who were modifying the chamber. We're rebuilding it. No more platforms looking down on others. Everyone at the same level. Everyone equal, Sarah smiled. It was the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from her since before Arcturus Station. You think they'll come? After everything. Some will. The ones who were oppressed by the Council. The ones who were afraid to speak out. They'll come. Marcus turned to look at her. What about the others? The ones who were part of the betrayal? They'll face justice, Sarah said, and her voice went cold. We have Chancellor Vorn and 43 other Council leaders in custody. The trials start next week. The whole galaxy will watch. The trials were held on Earth. Marcus thought that was fitting. Let the leaders who had tried to destroy humanity see what they had failed to kill. Let them see the rebuilt cities, the new ships in orbit, the people who had survived despite everything. The proceedings were broadcast across every frequency. Humanity had learned a lot from the Council about communication technology. Now they used it to show the galaxy what real justice looked like. Chancellor Vorn stood in the defendant's box, his silver skin somehow looking dull under the courtroom lights. The evidence against him was overwhelming. His own communications, his orders, his plans to divide humanity's corpse among the victors. The defense argues that I was acting in the Council's best interest, Vorn said during his testimony. Humanity was an unknown factor, a potential threat. We made a strategic decision. You made a decision to commit genocide, the prosecutor replied. She was human, a former diplomat who had survived the Devourer War. You didn't just refuse aid. You actively planned humanity's destruction and your profit from it. That's how power works, Vorn said. The strong survive. The weak perish. If humanity was truly strong, they would have survived without our help. We did survive, Sarah said from the witness stand. Without your help. Despite your betrayal, we survived and we came for you. That's how power really works, Chancellor. Actions have consequences. The trials lasted 2 months. In the end, Vorn and 17 other Council leaders were found guilty of war crimes, attempted genocide, and crimes against sapient beings. The sentences varied. Some were imprisoned. Some were exiled. Vorn himself was stripped of all rank and property and sent to a work camp on a barren moon, where he would spend the rest of his life understanding what it meant to be powerless. But the trials were only part of the change sweeping the galaxy. The real revolution was in what came after. The Terran Accord was founded 6 months after the war ended. Unlike the Galactic Council, it had no supreme leader, no species that ruled over others. It was a true alliance of equals, where decisions were made by consensus and power came from cooperation, not domination. The first species to join were predictable, the ones who had been oppressed by the Council, the smaller civilizations who had lived in fear. But then something unexpected happened. Some of the Council's former members asked to join as well. The Corthians, who had fought against humanity, petitioned for membership. They had seen their leaders' corruption exposed and wanted a fresh start. We should refuse them, one of the human delegates argued during the debate. They were part of the betrayal. They were following orders, Sarah countered. She had been appointed as Earth's ambassador to the new accord. Their leaders betrayed us. Their people were just as much victims of the Council's corruption as we were. If we refuse them now, we become what we fought against. The vote was close, but the Corthians were admitted. Then the Zenthi, then others. Species that had been enemies weeks ago were now allies. It wasn't perfect. There was distrust. There were arguments. But it was real in a way the Council never had been. Admiral Marcus Johnson took on a different role. He became the commander of the Accord Defense Force. Not just human ships now, but vessels from a dozen species all working together. The Fleet of Reckoning became the core of a larger armada, dedicated not to conquest but to protection. We learned something fighting the Devourers, Marcus explained to the new recruits from various species. We learned that alone any species can fall, but together, working as one, we can face anything. That's what this fleet represents. Not human power, not Corthian strength, not Zenthi courage, all of it, combined. The biomechanical technology that humanity had developed from the Devourers was shared with Accord members. Some species were uncomfortable with it at first. The ships looked strange, felt wrong, but they couldn't argue with the results. The new vessels were faster, tougher, more adaptable than anything the galaxy had seen. Earth itself transformed. The scars of war remained, but they became symbols of survival rather than defeat. The impact craters were turned into memorial parks. The ruined cities were rebuilt with help from across the Accord. The planet that the Council had tried to kill became the heart of something new. Dr. Yuki Chen continued her research, but now with alien scientists working alongside her. The combination of human adaptability and other species' knowledge led to breakthroughs that would have taken centuries before. New medical treatments, new energy sources, new ways of understanding the universe. It's strange, Yuki said during one interview. The Council tried to kill us because they feared what we might become. But it was their betrayal that made us strong enough to change the galaxy. They created the very thing they feared. Captain Sarah Chen stood once again in the rebuilt Council chambers. But now she stood on the same level as everyone else. Representatives from 40 species filled the chamber, all equal, all working together. The old Council believed in hierarchy, she said during her inaugural address as ambassador. They believed some species deserved to rule while others should follow. They were wrong. The universe doesn't care about our hierarchies. The Devourers didn't check to see who was in charge before they attacked. Threats don't respect borders or titles. She paused, looking at the assembled representatives, former enemies, new allies, all of them here because they had chosen cooperation over domination. We offer something different, Sarah continued. The Terran Accord is based on a simple principle. We are stronger together than apart. Not because one species is supreme, but because each species brings something unique. Humans bring adaptability. Corthians bring strength. Zenthi bring honor. Valorians bring wisdom when they choose to use it. There were some chuckles at that. The Valorian representative looked uncomfortable but nodded in acknowledgement. The Council fell because it was built on lies and greed, Sarah said. The Accord will succeed because it's built on truth and mutual benefit. When one of us is threatened, all of us respond. When one of us prospers, all of us share. That's not weakness. That's strength. The chamber erupted in various forms of applause, from hand-clapping to tentacle-waving to harmonic singing. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. There would be arguments and conflicts and disagreements, but it was real. It was honest, and it was theirs. Admiral Marcus Johnson watched the address from Earth, where he was overseeing the training of new Accord Defense Force crews. He thought about how far humanity had come, from a species begging for help to one that had changed the galaxy, from victims of betrayal to architects of a new order. "Admiral," one of his officers called, "we're receiving reports of unusual activity in the Outer Rim. Could be pirates, could be something else." Marcus smiled. There would always be threats. The universe was a dangerous place, but humanity no longer faced it alone. Neither did anyone else. "Alert the fleet," he ordered. "All species, all ships. Let's show them what the Accord can do." As the ships launched, human and alien working side by side, Marcus reflected on the Council's greatest mistake. They had thought betraying humanity would be easy. They had thought leaving Earth to die would be profitable. They had thought wrong. Humanity had survived. And in surviving, they had shown the galaxy a different path. Not perfect, not easy, but better. The Council had betrayed humanity and paid. But more importantly, their betrayal had given birth to something greater than either humanity or the Council could have built alone. The Terran Accord wasn't just humanity's revenge. It was everyone's second chance, and this time, they would get it right. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and full of possibility. Somewhere out there, new threats lurked. New challenges waited. But whatever came, they would face it together. Not as conquerors or victims, but as allies, as equals, as one. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of the Terran Accord had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.